Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Tales from the Darkness. Gather round and try to stay in the light. Some of the others from the dark aren't quite as civil as I am, and I hate cleaning up that mess. Something pushed my mom down the stairs. From Big Country Red, 1993. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, my aunt convinced my mom to move into a duplex with her. My aunt and cousin had the left side, and my mom, my brother, and I had the right side of the duplex. The duplex had 2 stories. The upstairs had a door that at one point connected both sides, but it had been sealed shut. The house was very old. All the doors had those old locks that require skeleton keys. Basically, everything about the house was vintage. Being that young, I was very innocent, and I hadn't experienced anything that I couldn't explain. When we first moved in, we all slept in the upstairs room. The stairway had a door that, of course, opened up to a narrow staircase with no handrail. My cousin thoroughly enjoyed scaring the crap out of us by beating on the other side of the wall in the middle of the night. He would also tell us stories of a man being buried alive in one of the upstairs walls. I didn't believe his stories, and I still don't. Ironically, around that time, weird stuff started happening in the house. We would be asleep upstairs, and all of a sudden, I'd wake up to the feeling that I was being watched. At the same time, it would get really cold. I would just lay back down and try to go back to sleep. Weirdly, nothing happened on the ground floor. It was all upstairs. It elevated to the extreme feeling that something was standing inches away from the other side of me since I slept on my side. Like all my senses would go into overdrive, and my body got this tingling feeling, but I'd be too scared to roll over and look. Keeping my eyes closed kept me in the sanctuary, or so I thought. One time, I had a friend from school over, and we were upstairs playing PlayStation. 1 second, we looked around the room, then back to the screen. And the next second, everything hanging on the wall in the room had hit the floor. The only thing is, we didn't notice till we looked up from our game. It didn't make any noise. My friend decided to just go ahead and call his dad to come get him. From that point on, we slept downstairs. My mom was in denial over the whole thing. Mom ignored it all till the day she and I were sitting on the living room couch and heard someone stop from the center of the upstairs room to the top of the staircase. There was no one upstairs. My mom looked at me and I saw desperation and fear wash across her face. She told me, "I'm going to look upstairs just to check things out. Stay back, and if you hear me screaming or falling down the stairs, call 911. It was just dark enough outside that the upstairs was pitch black from down the staircase. Mom flipped the light on and slowly ascended the stairs. I looked up as she got to the top to see confusion on her face. She saw nothing up there. As she turned back towards me, one of my old baseballs was launched at her head from across the room. It missed her head by an inch, and as she looked at the ball, something hit her dead center of her lower back. It hit with so much force, her belly bowed out as her feet left the ground. She missed all 14 steps and landed face first in a scorpion-like pose. The stairway light was vigorously flickering. She came to and crawled towards me as I cowered down in the living room. The staircase door slammed shut and something stomped back across the room. My mom was lucky enough not to be seriously injured, as we were too poor to go to the hospital anyway. We moved out in less than a week. That whole week was filled with dread and fear until we left that place. That was my first experience of paranormal activity. My House, from 13 Frodo. This is not a fake story or anything for attention. I just want someone to believe me besides my friends. Now, I live in an old-ass 100-plus-year-old house that I have lived in my whole life. When my parents bought the house, they were going through and putting some stuff in the basement, and found a dead cat that had been completely hollowed out and mummified. They got someone to throw it out, and then I guess they carried on. My mother does not believe in ghosts and constantly thinks I'm telling a tall tale every time me or a friend comes down and tells her that something is definitely wrong. I recently had the attic renovated into the 3rd floor, and ever since have moved my room up into it. At night you can hear footsteps walking around the room, and seemingly wearing some sort of clunky shoe or boot. Every time I look down at it from my loft bed, it takes half of one step, and then there is a very loud stomp. The first few times I got really spooked and had to force myself back to sleep. Now I just feel kinda spooked and go back to sleep, hoping that I won't die or something. Alright, back to the basement. So in the basement, there's a boiler room that is bolted shut, and also missing the other half of the doorknob from the inside of the room. One time, as a joke, me and my friend were goofing around and filming stuff when, out of the blue, the doorknob twists and the room opens up. Obviously, we dipped real hard because of this, and had been too scared to go back down. There were other times when we went down there and glass things have flown across the room and broken, but the boiler room thing still gives me chills, considering that my parents have lived here for 20 plus years and they have never been able to open that door, nor have they seen it opened. There was another incident that happened here when I was around 11 years old. I was in my room all alone when I saw from the other side of the room a hanging lady. She was old and very pale, and wearing a white dress with some reddish brown or rusty stains on it that could have been blood. I looked at her and gasped very loudly. Her body, still in the noose, had completely swung to face me, and then her eyes opened up. I say her eyes, but they were more like hollow, endless voids where her eyes should have been. They didn't even open up like a human's eyes would. They just kind of extended up from the bottom to the top. I've cried and tried to forget about it, but it still haunts me. My husband thinks something is attached to me. From Anonymous. This is going to be fairly long, so I want to start from the beginning. When I was a teenager, my best friend and I played with an old Ouija board that her mom had had for many years. We played with it maybe 2 or 3 times when we were 16. My friend asked it one night when she would die, and it told her when she was 21 and as a result of overdose on pills. This didn't come true, but she did die in a car accident at 20 years old. Fast forward several years, and I was around 20 or 21 years old, living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my now husband. We lived in New England at the time, and the house was originally an old Victorian single-family home that had been converted to several apartments. After we had been living there for about 6 months, I started having experiences. The first of the experiences started at night, and I would hear what sounded like slamming doors or loud running and banging when trying to fall asleep. I initially thought this was my downstairs neighbors, as one of their children suffered from some severe kind of autism and was prone to outbursts. This continued for weeks, and I continued to kind of ignore it. One night it was so relentless that I got out of bed and went to sit in the living room to read for a while since the noises were keeping me up. But when I went out there, the noises completely stopped. I stayed out in the living room for a while and they never resumed. The entirety of the time we lived in this apartment, this occurred. Loud stomping noises at night, only in our bedroom and only at night. Our bathroom was also located in our bedroom. We would often get a smell of something like meat. My husband would say it smelled like sour bologna, and honestly, it's probably as close as it gets to an accurate description. The smell wasn't constant, but it would appear probably 3 to 4 times a week. Only in the bathroom, never in any other part of the apartment. We assumed it was something nasty our neighbors were cooking. This was also something that occurred the entirety of our time living in this apartment. There were some one-off instances in this apartment as well, and these all happened several weeks and months apart. We lived in this apartment for 2 years. One night we were sleeping and woke up to a loud sound and something falling on the bed. We turned on the bedside lamp and the glass dome light on our ceiling had completely split in half. One half was still attached and the other was what had fallen on the bed. The light bulb was still intact and it still turned on and off. My husband was traveling for work one week and I was home alone. I woke up one morning and one of my curtains, rod and all, was completely removed and laying on the floor. On the other wall, we had a window unit air conditioner, and the front panel was also completely removed and on the floor. My husband got up to get ready for work one morning, and there was a small puddle of water in front of the bathroom door. We had no pets, and there was no leak in the bathroom. It was on the outside of the door in our bedroom. We told one of our friends about all of these experiences one night, and after he left, we lost all power in our apartment. The hallway lights were still on, and all other units had power. This could have just been coincidence, faulty wiring due to it being an old house, or something like that. It still freaked us out though. We moved out of the apartment due to an attempted break-in, and moved in with my husband's parents for a while. We had no experiences in his parents' home. We moved back into the building 3 years later when a 2-bedroom unit became available. Initially we had no experiences. After living there for about 6 months, we started to smell the sour bologna smell in the hallway outside our door every so often. We came home from the grocery store one day and there was a small puddle of water on the floor near the threshold between our living room and the main hallway. My husband was home alone one day and he said he heard something in the kitchen. And when he went to investigate, our paper towels that were on the counter were sitting upright in the middle of the floor. No other experiences outside of a general feeling of uneasiness. We moved out after living there for a year and moved out of state for my husband's work. We lived with my grandmother for about 9 months. No experiences. We have lived in our current apartment for about 6 months. The complex was built within the last 10 years and no real experiences yet. The only thing that's troubling me is that in my laundry room, located off the guest bathroom, it has had the meat smell on 2 occasions. I also hear some noises at night, but I can't say that it's anything other than neighbors or our cat since they aren't super loud or distinguishable. My husband always says that I screwed myself playing with the Ouija board when I was young, and that now whatever it is follows me. I go back and forth with this because whatever it is doesn't always happen or appear in every place that I live. I do always have a general uneasiness at night, especially about dark doorways or hallways, and that has been in every residence. But I feel like that's a common thing for a lot of people. My Old Neighbor's House, from Ray223. Okay, so this is basically my family's entire experience with this certain house that used to belong to an old woman named Mary. It's kinda long, but I want to talk about it. I grew up in a small coal mining town where most of the houses were duplexes, 2 houses that are connected and mirror each other. They are also old. The town has been around since 1917. Anyway, my family and I lived on one side of the duplex, and an old woman named Mary lived on the other side with an ungodly looking cat that was probably as old as her. Her side always gave me the creeps because it was always so silent over there. It was like it was empty. We never heard a peep out of the house while she was alive and living there. Then she passed away, and so did her cat that same week. Us neighborhood kids used to joke around that she was a witch, and I don't remember where we got that idea, but my mother said she wouldn't be surprised. My parents thought it'd be a good idea to buy the place and use it as a rental property so they could control who moved in. Well, my sister had just turned 18, so they let her live there as a starter home. She's 9 years older than me. My sister was kind of a bad kid. She went to college and went a little crazy experimenting with drugs and whatnot, and didn't take great care of the house. After about a month of her living over there, she noticed weird crap happening. She'd hear things, get touched in the middle of the night, wake up in a panic and come over to sleep on our couch because she was afraid, and things like that. The longer she lived there, the worse it got. When I'd get home from school, I'd be alone on our side for about half an hour before my dad got home from work, and my sister was at college until the evening. I can't remember at what point it started exactly, but damn near every day when I'd get home, I'd grab myself something to eat in the kitchen and would hear the banging of cupboards and stomping around on my sister's side. The first time, I actually thought someone was burglarizing the place. I ran outside to peek into the kitchen window, where I was hearing all this stuff happen, and it looked completely untouched. I went back inside my house and it started again, clanging of pans and slamming cupboard doors from the other side. I was so scared that I bolted out of the house and ran to my cousins that lived down the road until my dad came home. He didn't say much about it. I was an honest kid and I had no reason to lie, and I know he believed me. If he heard anything, he kept it to himself. It seriously freaked my mother out though, and we'd begin to hear noises coming from that side daily when no one was there. This is my main experience that I tell people when talking about that house. I was hanging out with my cousin while my parents were out shopping. We were just walking around town, passing a football, killing time. We were about to pass my house, and I seriously had to pee. So I ran up and tried the door, which was locked from when my parents left. My sister wasn't home either, but I knew she never locked her door. So I walked into her house instead. The second that door shut behind me, I felt uneasy. I hated her house. It felt heavy. That's the only way I could describe it. But I was busting to pee at this point, so I gritted my teeth, kept my eyes straight ahead of me, and proceeded upstairs to the bathroom. I finished my business, flushed the toilet, and started washing my hands. As I reached for the doorknob, I felt my hair stand on end, and I got cold all over. I froze. I shut my eyes and managed to mumble something to the effect of, "If you're here, Mary, please don't show yourself." And I was praying silently to God that he'd let me not see anything. I twisted the knob and opened the door, and the second I passed the threshold into the hallway, I heard the toilet flush again behind me. My heart jumped into my throat, and I basically threw myself down the stairs. I don't think I even touched them, to be honest. I busted out the door to see my cousin sitting outside on the grass looking startled. He knew the stories and had refused to go in with me. I explained what happened and we hightailed it back to his place until my parents got back. Another time, my sister had some friends over to stay, and around 10:30 at night, they all came knocking on our door, asking to sleep in the living room. Apparently, one of her friends went to use the bathroom and heard something growling at her from the spare room down the hall. She had thought it was a dog. My sister doesn't have any pets. She told my sister her dog was growling at her, and she responded saying she doesn't have a dog. Quit messing around, stuff like that. But she swore she heard growling and they all came to sleep at our place. My sister has had countless freaky things happen over there, and not just to herself. But every single boyfriend she's had while living there, and nearly every friend that's been over to visit, she's seen shadow people, being scratched, the works. We found out that when she first moved over there, she was messing with a Ouija board, and my mom freaked out on her and made her get rid of it. My mom is super spiritual and hates things like that. I'd never touch one either. They seriously scare me. Fast forward a couple years and my sister moves into her own place because she hates that one. Surprise, surprise. My mom really wants to open it up into one big house. What my mom wants, my mom gets. So we made it all one big house. I look into the master bedroom on what used to be my sister's side, also known as the haunted side. Honestly though, after she moved out, it felt different. My mom cleaned it up really nice and did that thing with the sage, and I felt okay being over there for the most part. I grew up to be similar to my dad. We ignored the weird stuff and it didn't bother us. My mom is more sensitive and always said how me and my dad could close ourselves off to it. My mom said I had better energy than my sister too. We used to joke that she had some bad juju following her around, and she took whatever was there with her. Once we opened it up, there was significantly less things happening, and when they did, they were few and far between and didn't feel menacing. Just some bumps here and there, which we could usually just blame on the house being old and creaky. We just brush it off for the most part. My parents still live in that house, and they hear things every so often, but nothing to the extent of what happened when my sister lived there. We think either Mary hated her guts, or she accidentally made contact with something menacing with the board that would harass her. but I could go on for days about things that happened over there. I don't talk much about it. I'm very logical and a grounded person, but I just wanted to share this. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Do not try to contact the other side, especially if you have no clue what you're doing. Screwing around with that crap can have serious repercussions, and it is not a game. My sister has since straightened up and hasn't had any paranormal experiences in years. She firmly believes that she made contact with something bad and it fed off her bad energy. Sometimes when I stay over at my parents' in my old room, I get the creepy feeling of being watched. It's the strangest thing because it feels familiar. My mom still feels things once in a blue moon that really freak her out, and my dad continues to ignore it. I know he gets scared, and that's why he doesn't acknowledge it. I do the same thing. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, and subscribe if you want to hear more. If you have any suggestions for future videos, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If you would like to hear your story read, you can submit it to storiesofdarkness55@gmail.com. And as always, pleasant dreams.